poem from Rumi. It says, I profess the love of religion. Love is my religion, my faith. My mother is love. My father is love. My prophet is love. My God is love. I am a child of love. I have come only to speak of love. And Rumi wrote this poem. And when I read it, I realized it really could have been written by any of us, because this is what we say at Speakeasy. Love is our religion. His other poem was, we are born of love, and love is our mother. So I love that idea that says we are born of love and love is our mother, because we don't really get to have that holy conversation about mother too often. She's mentioned in the 10 Commandments where it says love your mother and father. I think it's interesting that that needed to be said. Like that wasn't going to be something that would be easy. Like we need to don't kill, don't sleep with your neighbor's wife, and love your mother and father. Like that should be not on the top 10 list. That should be something that just comes natural. But there it is, because we don't. We don't honor the mother and father all the time. We attempt to, but there are blind spots, right? And so we get to look at that today. We get to look at how don't we honor our mothers and fathers, specifically our mothers today. So how don't we honor our mothers? And as a prayer practitioner, I hear a lot of stories. People come with places that are broken and fractured, and they say, my mom, my mom drives me crazy. My mom is so controlling. My mom is, bitch. My mom is nags me all the time, and I have this thing with my mom. A lot of people have mom issues. And it's interesting because I don't get the same stories with dads. With dads, I usually get, my dad just wasn't there enough. Isn't that interesting? But we'll talk about dads on Dad's Day. But today, it's my mom. So we experience this idea that the mom has all of this baggage on her, and we get to look at where did that come from? Where did it come from? I know in my own looking back to my childhood, I remember my mom did something really, really special for me when I was a kid. I was a talker, go figure, and I was like in the house jabbing at her all day long and all night long, and she had two other kids. I had 5 older sisters and 2 younger brothers, so she only had 2 ears, but I wanted all of them. And but outside in the world, I was kind of shy, actually. So one day, she literally walked me to the front sidewalk, and she tied a rope around my chest, and she walked backwards with the other end of the rope, and she walked all the way to the backyard and tied the other end of the rope to our clothesline to ensure that I wouldn't go any further than the sidewalk. And then she came up to me, and she said, you're the greeter. You greet people. And I was like, what? I'm the greeter? And I was like, wow, I didn't know I was the greeter. But my mom, blessed me with this identity. And even though I was nervous, I was like, well, I guess I better get to busy greeting people. And, people would come down our block to go to the church at the end of our street. And I would see them, and I'd say, hi, I'm Maureen. I'm the greeter. My mom said I'm the greeter. And how are you? I had a speech impediment. I couldn't say my R's. It didn't prevent me from saying everything else. But, I really spent some time, and I got my initiation into finding my voice in a public arena. What my mom gave to me was so powerful. I didn't see that for myself, right? But she noticed it, and she pushed me into it. And then what was interesting, what happened was this beautiful reality show of my youth was given the kibosh by this crabby, nosy, busybody church lady who was making her way down the street, and she saw what was going on, and she knocked on my mother's door, and she said, you can't leave your daughter out there in the yard tied up like a yard dog. She was like, this is not nice. This is not nice. What kind of a mother are you? And I watched from my end of the leash at this scenario, and I was like, no, it's good. My mom's a good mom. And my mom just filled with shame. She had one baby on one hip. She had my other brother pushing back with their big thigh, and she pulled me back into the house. And I watched the church lady go down the street to church, and I watched my mom just get closed in with this fear. And I made a promise to myself I was never going to be a good church lady. I wanted to be an innovative rock star like my mom. But that was when I began to get groomed in our societal agreements of what's appropriate for the feminine voice, for the mother voice. that we would not have authority in the church, and we would not have authority in politics, and we would certainly not have authority in our own front yard. And that we were supposed to be nice or be quiet. And that's what I got from the nuns at school, too. And I probably got this because I talked a lot, but it was often, button your lip, button your lip. Everything was button your lip. And I was like, I don't have a button. I don't know what you're talking about. So we have this voice within us that's not always honored. Though we've made great strides to honor the Mother, Father, God that lives within each of us, because it does live within each of us, when we talk about the Mother God, that's our intuition. That's a powerful and important voice that needs to be married with the intellect. That's the masculine. Both of these things exist within us, and when they are not honored, we have a society that does not work. So it's interesting that we are slowly unearthing the voice of both our Mother, Father, God, and that both of them are being welcomed with the Me Too, and turn on the lights. But when you first turn on the lights, you're going to see some stuff that's unhealed. So that's all that's about. You know, just like when you go into your closet and you haven't paid attention to it for a long time, you know, you turn on the lights, you're like, what happened? You know, what happened is nobody paid attention to this, and that's what happens when things are not paid attention to. When we talk about moms being naggy, condemning, controlling, that usually comes from a source that's not being paid attention to, so they have to overcompensate for that being unhonored. So I speak of things from a metaphysical point of view, you know, so above the symbols. When I talked about the water and the wine, we'll go into it a little bit deeper. You know, we talk about it in a symbolic way. When we talk about, the Mother, Father, there's one of the books that I use, especially for decoding Bible stories, is the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. This is from Unity. And Unity is a beautiful religion. Here we honor all paths to God, and Unity is a beautiful path to God. And it's a Christian community, very, very progressive. And so I use this to help me figure out some of the Bible stories. So when I was working with the story of, the wedding at Galilee, which I've told many times, I decided this, Mother's Day, I would look at it and ask, what does the mother mean in this story? So I broke out my dictionary, my trusty dictionary. I look up mom, and I look up, and I look, and I look, and I look, and I look, and she's not there. She's not even there, not even in the most progressive Christian vernacular. She's not there. I said, well, maybe they've just excluded mother and father. So I looked for father, and he did make it into the addendum. But it's interesting that, that it's kind of erased. And I think that there is a call for a healing, that we have this place that's being unheard, and that it's time for a healing, and that we actually live on the cusp of that healing. And it's imperative for each of us to do that healing in an individual way, both men and women, to honor both the intellect and the inspirational that comes through all of us. So until we have that, we almost have a society that's living under a widowed God. So that's not the truth. So we're living under an illusion of brokenness and fractured. And so when we do that, we have a world that can seem broken and fractured as well. So today we're going to do a little ritual for the moms, to honor the mom's voice, to give that permission to come out in a holy way, an optimal idea. And you can come up and experience the ritual whether you live in a man body or a woman body. But the optimal idea is to really listen in and see what is yours to say with grace. But I will also say that if you choose to speak with condemnation, if you find yourself badgering and nagging or being controlling, that doesn't always necessarily have to be a bad thing. That in fact, in the wedding of Galilee, Mary exhibits those qualities. And they actually help push Jesus into performing his first miracle. So there are some great medicine in actually activating and making that okay. At Stanford, they did a scientific experiment with the mother's voice, and a child can identify a mother's voice in under a second. A child can identify it. Even in the midst of lots of other clips of different voices, the child can identify it, and they do all these scientific experiments, and they put the kid under this cap or something, and they can see how the brain reacts. And when a mom speaks, the child's brain lights up like Christmas morning. I thought that was so interesting. So it's saying that the mother's voice is actually healing. It's beneficial to the brain. So when they say call your mom, like it's not just a nice thing to do. It's like very healing, right? They said like with teenagers in school when they're stressed out, that when they speak to their mother, it raises the oxytocin in their body. Science is backing up what we already knew to be true. So this is important to honor our mothers and to get past the place where we say, my mom, I don't want to talk to her. She drives me crazy. I've had so many moms in my life, but I've had two. My mom passed away, like you said, when I was 14, and then I had a stepmother. And, you know, gosh, if you could have one more day with them, you would trade anything. So while you have your mom, like honor her. So there's a story of the wedding at Galilee, and it's when Jesus and Mary, and I tell these stories in a modern twist, so just bear with me. Jesus and Mary and his tribe go to this wedding in Galilee. And Mary, the mother of Jesus, you know, she's probably got her hands full. She's like birthed Jesus Christ to begin with. And she goes to there, and she, you know, it's after a long day probably, and she goes to the bar or wherever, and asks for a glass of wine. And they tell her there's no more wine. And so she utters the words that we moms, those of us who drink a glass of wine on Fridays, have been uttering since, you know, eternity when we come home and we open the refrigerator and we find someone has drank all the wine. She says, Jesus, no wine! And so she looks over at Jesus and she says, you know, come forth. You know, now's the time. Like, come and get your mom some happy juice. And Jesus says to her, which I think is really interesting, he says, woman, get ye behind me. So first of all, it's really interesting that he calls her woman. Like that, I think, is sort of a dishonoring. You know, like if you ever said to your mom, like, hey, woman. I don't know if that would fly in my house. But so he's reached this point where he's saying, no, I will not do this. Get ye behind me. Don't push me forward. So, you know, Joseph Campbell talks about the hero's journey. If you know about the hero's journey, it talks about in every good story, there's the hero. Jesus is the hero of the story. And the first thing that happens is Jesus comes and or the hero is invited to the call to the adventure. Like my mom brought me to the sidewalk. That was the call to the adventure. The second thing that usually happens is the hero denies the call to adventure. Says, no, I'm not ready. Or I'm not willing. Usually that's the scenario that's playing out. The scenario of I'm not ready is the ego that says, like, I don't even know if I can do this. Like, don't push me out there. I don't know how to greet people. I don't know how to turn water into wine. Like, I don't know if this is mine to do. Get you behind me. This is not for me. This is what Jesus says. Or the other side of that coin is I'm not willing. And usually I'm not willing falls from a place of, you know, I'm better than this. Like, don't you know you don't see me like I'm so much better than this. Like, I'm not going to dabble in your like party tricks of making wine. That's not what I do. I raise the dead. So I'm not willing or I'm not ready. We vacillate between these two things. Always it's fear. Always it's ego. But Mary does not stop there. She, if you want to say, badgers, nags, controls him. She says, she goes to the waiter. She says, you see that guy over there? Do whatever he says. So she literally pulls him out again. Out into the center. Now, this is the first time that Jesus has a miracle, and, you know, God preordained this, that it wouldn't happen in the back corner of some private room, that it was in the middle of a wedding. You know, this is one of the biggest celebrations that they had in those times. Everyone in the community was there. So, of course, he might have been a little trepidatious about stepping forward. And so the waiter, you know, comes out, and Jesus finally, maybe reluctantly, he takes the water. And he blesses it. As I mentioned, water is mass conscious agreement. It's all of the thoughts that we have. It's all of the reason they call it mass conscious agreements in a metaphysical sense is because if you pour water into a cup, it takes the shape of the cup. If you pour water into a swimming pool, it takes the shape of the pool. If you pour water into a thimble, it takes the shape of the thimble. So mass consciousness, universal mass consciousness, which we all live in, will just kind of conform to the set agreements. The sky is blue, gravity will works against you if you drop out of a plane. Like all of these mass conscious agreements that we just agree to them because they're what keeps us safe and that we conform to that size. So he takes the water and he blesses it. Again, that's the alchemy, where we take all of these thoughts and ideas and we direct them towards God. And we say, although we have, bird flu and we have AIDS and we have weird political things going on and we have the Me Too thing, although we have all of this mad rambling going on the current events, we're going to take all of that and we're going to say God is all there is. I am one with that, and I know a greater good is unfolding. This is a blessing. It's a simple blessing that he performs over the water. And this is turned into wine. In the metaphysical definition of wine, it's how body and spirit are joined together. So he's bringing something that can cause a shift in your consciousness, and if you've ever had a good glass of wine, it works. So we look at this story. We get to see ourselves in the story. Where am I pushing too hard? Where am I leaning back too far? Where am I not willing to play my part? Where am I, thinking I'm better or not enough? Where can I come more wholly to the conversation and allow myself to be used just as God would have me be used without my opinions, Because every single moment is preordained for you to show up in your most holy self, and everything is for you. Everything can work for you as you continue to use that alchemy that Jesus used, which is prayer. Going to God first, knowing that you're one with it, knowing that everything is going to benefit you, and not only you, but as you go to God first, knowing your own benefit, you can also be sure that your good benefits everyone. When we work from an ego point of view that says, no, thank you, or I can't do it, or, I'm too good for this, we will get a spiritual hangover. You'll start to feel the toxicity of that isolation, because those thoughts bring isolation. When we move into union with a holy power, those things bring communion, conversations. And that's why when we sit here knee to knee and eye to eye, we have a conversation, because all voices are honored here, because this is the time that needs to happen, and maybe it will birth forth more and more opportunities for greater communities to use that format and include everyone in the conversation. To tell you the truth, the way that we started here was very much based on 12-step. Where I learned in 12-step that, it wasn't just the leader that had all the information, that wisdom sat in every single chair. And as people shared their courage and strength and wisdom, there was a healing that happened in exponential ways. So if you're new here, at the end of our little ritual, we're going to have a little conversation. But before we do that, we're going to start a ritual. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask any moms or anybody who wants to heal their intuition or honor their intuition to come on up and stand up here. And we'll place a blessing on you. We're actually going to do something else. We want you to think about, what is the thing that you want to honor? What is the true statement that you want to honor? And what Letty and I are going to say to you is, I see you, I honor you, I hear you, I love you. So I see you, I honor you, I hear you, I love you. So don't skimp out on being a part of the ritual. So I'm going to invite you up if you want to have a healing on that.